put together a fun show for you. Bill Riley is going to stop by. We'll talk with him in about half an hour. We'll discuss the NBA All-Star rankings, check in on the NFL with the Super Bowl approaching. What are we, with 9 days away from the Super Bowl, I guess. So plenty to get into. As we talked about on the show a little bit yesterday, I'm starting to really dive into this pre-draft process. It is, for me, it's the best like non-competition sporting discussion that happens. I know that contract stuff has taken over a lot of that, and we'll get into some of the biggest free agents and the money that's going to be thrown around. New announcement from the NHL about their salary cap increasing, pretty significant increases too. If you're a player in the NHL right now, if you're one of these guys on a Utah Hockey Club squad, you're looking at this increasing payroll, the salary cap, and you're saying, all right, business is good in the NHL. Now, none of these guys are even close to approaching NBA money or Major League Baseball money yet, but when you're talking about individuals who are, look, they're handsomely compensated, but it's a lot closer to being paid like like a doctor or a business executive than it is like a celebrity, the way that other pro sports look. You're looking at a salary cap increase of $10 to $20 million year over year, and you're saying that's cool. I can get a little chunk of that. So we'll get into some of that. And I think that our business obsession as sports fans, and really our materialism as an American society, has led to some of this, where we get really in the weeds about money, guaranteed money, whether or not people are worth the contracts that they are given, et cetera. And those sexy numbers that are thrown around and floated and made public, usually because agents want everyone to know how much money they're giving their clients so they can attract more clients. We have bitten down so hard on that it's become, in my opinion, the number one off-season discussion point, or the number one out-of-competition discussion point with basically every major pro sport. I'm equally guilty of the fascination. I totally understand the fascination. It's part of the hero worship situation we get into with the professional athletes that we love. It's part of the political conversation we get into and the social conversation we get into when you talk about salary comparisons between leagues, especially when you're talking about salary comparisons between World Cup soccer programs, USA soccer programs, between the men and the women, WNBA versus NBA. It's just a major portion of the discourse around pro sports contracts. But it's not the most entertaining. It's not the most fun. Even though it is, I think, the primary out-of-competition conversation, the most fun is when you get into the projections of who can actually do it at the next level. You've got an NBA draft lottery coming up that the Jazz expect to be major players in. And that probably means that your average NBA Jazz fan, or your average everyday pro basketball fan, period, whether you're a Jazz fan or you like the Nuggets or the Warriors, or you've been on a Spurs bandwagon since the 90s, whatever it is, you're probably paying a little bit more attention to college basketball right now than you would in previous years. The worse your favorite basketball team is in the NBA, the more competition you're probably paying to college basketball. And for most of the fans that have reason to listen to a show like this one, you're probably at least in some way emotionally attached to the Utah Jazz and their outcomes. And because of that, you should be paying close attention to college basketball prospects, who they could be in the NBA. I admire every single one of you who also dives into the European basketball scene and figures out what international prospects are out there. I think that's actually going to be a little easier as the years go by, because two factors have come into play. Name, image, and likeness makes it possible for collegiate programs to attract talents that would otherwise stay and be pros in Europe, because the best prospects on the other side of the pond are playing pro basketball when they're 15, 16, 17 years old. They don't have the same rules in a lot of these places that we have in the United States, where you have to be at least 1 year out of college. You have to go do your gap year or do the one and done thing in college basketball. And now that the economics of college basketball allow it to make sense for elite prospects to come over here and play, Yegor Demmin, I think, is a great example of this. A guy who is at BYU right now. And if it was not for NIL, if it was not for the fact that he could get paid and that Jazz ownership, BYU alum, Danny Ainge, whoever you want to attach that to, Kevin Young's NBA connections, wanted a guy like that who's going to be a lottery pick and said, we can get him because we can incentivize him to come play NCAA basketball now. Just 5 years ago, these guys, instead of playing in the NBA, or excuse me, instead of playing in the NCAA basketball scene, they were going to stay and play pro basketball in Europe. And then you as a fan had to really invest your time and the late nights or the early mornings or just the YouTube searches and trying to find the highlights of individuals like this so you could be ultimately informed on what that guy was. Now, NCAA basketball allows for players to be paid. So these guys are going to come over and they're going to play in the NCAA. Also, the NBA, we talked about this a little bit with Gordy Chiesa yesterday. The NBA is exploring NBA Europe, NBA Middle East, NBA regional leagues, and this is the Champions League model. We're actually trying to do this in the league that I am a part of, in the Professional Fighters League, where you create your own farm system, and then it is a seamless transition. So if and when that comes, I shouldn't say if, when that comes to fruition on the NBA front, it's going to be a lot easier for NBA franchise fans to follow the pipeline. Baseball fans have been able to do it for years. The G League allows you to do it somewhat already in the NBA. And when NBA Europe comes in, that international talent that's going to filter through an NBA Europe scene, you're just going to have a more, because your NBA team, ESPN, all the partners, they're going to tell you about who these players are, and they're going to show you who these players are, and you're not going to have to do the homework and the searching that currently you have to do. But right now, that's some of the fun. It's a hobby. It's a passion. It's a thing that if you're a sports fan, you can kind of separate yourself in the conversation, or you can impress your folks at the water cooler or depress your folks at the water cooler, depending on what their priorities are in life, by just rattling on about, hey, I was watching Senior Bowl practices. I was watching this AAU showcase. This guy's eventually going to be the next big thing. And so the pre-draft process, the combine, the workouts, the conversations, the interviews, the Wonderlic test, all of that is, for me, the most entertaining non-competition thing to speak about in all of sports. Projecting who can be great, who will be great, and being wrong about it more times than not, being right about it occasionally, and only focusing on the times you're right about it. It's just a fun thing for me. And I already lambasted James Peterson for not being as intense and not being as excited about this.
Yeah.
So
I'm not prefer the transactional James. Stuff. I do. But
okay, so you're the show me the money guy. You want
show me the money. Help me help you, OC.
That's it's a great Jerry Maguire reference.
You got that one. I love it. Hey, how about this
too? Could I take a quick aside and tell you why I remember Jerry Maguire so much?
Well, because it's a great movie first, but yeah.
I saw that movie in the theater like opening weekend when my grandmother was visiting. And my grandma, as I've said before on the show, is a big reason why I am a sports fan and why I have loyalty particularly to the San Francisco 49ers and had affinity for the San Jose Sharks. They were living in the Bay Area when I was a kid. So anyway, Grandma was like a big driver of my sports fandom, as I've said publicly on the show before. And that was, when you looked at the previews, that was a football movie. That's a sports movie, right? So I was like, I don't know, 13 years old maybe when it came out. And my parents, bless them, not overly concerned about movie ratings, because they made it clear that the expectation in my house was if you watch movies where there's a bunch of bad language, that doesn't mean you get to use the bad language. They made it pretty clear that, like,
good job by them.
The violence in the movies is, you're smart enough to know it's fake, right? They would not sign off on me watching prurient content and crazy, like, sexualized stuff, of course. And there's nothing in the Jerry Maguire, like, early 90s previews that suggested that would be part of it. It was like half rom-com, half sports movie, right?
Yeah.
So
you had me at hello.
Yes. So my grandma and my mom and my older brother and I went to see Jerry Maguire at, I think it was the old Sandy Movies 9. And I was sitting between my mom and my grandma watching Jerry Maguire. And if you remember, James, very, very early, I think maybe even the opening scene of that film is not the kind of thing you want to be watching sitting next to your grandma and your mom.
Yeah.
It's a pretty intense. It's for all you people out there listening, spoiler alert, if you got kids, you got to fast forward through like 10 minutes of that movie, 5 minutes of that movie, and especially when you're in like the phase of life that I was in, whatever it was, that's bad. So Jerry Maguire, for the worst reason, just etched itself into my brain because of the let me crawl out of my skin embarrassment of seeing that scene sitting between my mom and my grandma.
Well, I mean, you're very impressionable at that age, so it makes sense. That's hilarious. But going back to the NBA Europe being a farm system for current NBA franchises, what do you think about the Orenburg Urals? Orenburg, Russia.
I'm a big Urals fan because
or the Perm Urals,
because the Ural Mountains were a major player in my childhood because we spent a lot of time playing Risk.
Oh yes, of course.
And yes, so
Ural and Yakutsk and Kamchatka, which we always said Kamchachma. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you played Risk a lot when you were a kid, you were aware early in life of the importance of the Ural region, the Ural Mountains.
You can't get world domination without dominating the Urals first, OC.
Well, the other thing about it, the Urals, like, because you get those 7 extra armies, if you take over Asia, it's just so tempting, right? But you can't defend all those borders. No. You're inevitably going to spread yourself too thin. You got to build out of South America or out of Australia. And, Africa is actually probably a little bit easier to hold than you think it is. So you got to be careful about your ambition when you're playing Risk. And the Ural, that was like, I think I can hold it. You couldn't, all right? No. You couldn't, not early in the game. You couldn't.
Do you see how big Ukraine is? Do you see how many armies they can fit in Ukraine? Yeah, you can't hold the Urals. No, Australia was always my first move because you only have the 2 borders you have to, or really one if you get Siam. You just have to hold Siam, and you got all of Australia. You got everything underneath it. It was like an automatic 2 extra armies every turn.
You are absolutely correct. How many hours of life spent? Are kids nowadays even playing Risk? Because
I don't know.
That was not only an incredible geography lesson, not modern day geography lesson, because none of
like from 1910.
Yes, none of the map is not accurate anymore. But like, not only was a great geography lesson, but it also was like very much an excellent risk reward training.
Yeah.
When you were a kid, right? Because it was you get to choose how many dice you roll if you have the adequate armies.
Yes.
You get to choose which of those continents you're going to try to defend and which one you're going to try to hunker down on. And when you're young and ambitious, you're probably trying to go Asia. You're probably trying to defend all of Europe and get the extra armies because of it.
Or even North America. That's another tough one.
Yeah, North America was a tough one. Was that 5 extra armies, North America?
Yeah.
I mean, and people could come at you from Greenland. People could come at you from South and Central America. There was the little dashed line that meant people could attack you from Japan.
You can go from Japan or Kamchachma. We for some reason we said Cam Katchma in my family, and then I got older and looked at it closer. I'm like, that's not Cam Katchma. That's Cam Checketts. Oh man, Risk. Me and my brothers flipped many a game board from being angry at losing at Risk.
Yes, my older brother is.
That's the other plus with Risk. If you have a lot of rage, you just need to get out. Just lose at Risk.
I think it was bad for that. I think that Risk made it.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Exponentially worse because my older brother was a rage gaming kind of guy. Video games, rager, Risk, rager, not good.
Probably Monopoly too. We flipped over Monopoly board a time or two as well.
877-353-0700.
But we were talking about why Utah Wasatch is a bad name, which, by the way, credit to Ryan Smith, SCG, and Utah Hockey Club. They threw it out after one day. They're like, you know what? You're right. Outlaws should be in there. So good job by them. But we talked about Utah Wasatch being way too regional. I mean, and it's better for a AAA team or AA team. Like I think the Jazz Russian affiliate should be the Perm Urals. I think it's perfect.
Well, if you can't get someone from Kamchatka, then yes, do the Perm Urals. 877-353-0700. Text us your risk strategy on the Dish Pros text line, whichever continent you were trying to conquer.
Also, your record, because if your strategy is to get Asia and your record's bad, then we're going to be like, okay, that's a strategy again you should not take. But if it's good, we'll be like, okay, tell us how you did that, because that's impressive.
So all of this was a very circuitous way. I wanted to be talking about this pre-draft process, and look, we touched on it yesterday. Karene Reed continues to impress at Senior Bowl practices. The narrative around him is exactly what we told you it was going to be. Excellent football player, a little undersized, question mark whether or not his athleticism is truly elite, right? Karene Reed might be one of those guys, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. This is still a wonderful thing to be, especially in an era where you can now monetize your college experience. He might be one of those guys who is just a really excellent college player, and the NFL doesn't have a lot of interest in you. There are a ton of those dudes. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those guys who are college football legends who, for whatever reason, don't get the right opportunity, don't have the right raw athleticism. Things just break a certain way, and your career caps out at the college level. Again, let me stress, there is virtually nothing wrong with that, because most people, you peak in Little League. Most people, you peak in high school. If you can peak at a Division I Power 4 level like Karene Reed maybe does, like his brother Gabe Reed, who is an incredible player at Stanford and then at the University of Utah. Gabe Reed was phenomenal, like a really, really, really good player. And as a pro, just not necessarily what they were looking for. And there's nothing wrong with it. So my fear for Karene Reed, even though he has impressed so many people at the Senior Bowl and probably made himself a little bit of money in terms of a higher draft position, and maybe the higher your draft position, the more chances you get at the NFL level. Maybe his ceiling, maybe his real peak is he was a high level college player. Hopefully he gets to be a pro for a few years. Junior Tafuna right now is really making himself money in Mobile, Alabama. Junior Tafuna is a guy that we have known at the University of Utah was an elite prospect, was a really top-level player, but like so many, James, how many guys have there been like this that have gone through Utah, through BYU, through Utah State, through any of the various collegiate programs around the country? Injury addles their college production. They miss more games than anyone would like for them to miss. I mean, Junior Tafuna was one of the guys. He was a captain this year. He was an important part of elite teams at the University of Utah, and then saw some injury stuff start to kind of like settle in for him. And he was one of the guys that when I was like, hey, the captains have not all been available. this year for games together. Junior Tafuna was one of those guys who missed a couple of games. Correne Reed also, but Junior Tafuna was one of those dudes who him being out of the lineup really affected this team. And even though the defense continued to be productive and the guys behind him and alongside him filled in admirably, Junior Tafuna is a talent that is really, really difficult to replace. Nigh impossible to replace. And you're seeing that if you're watching any of the YouTube clips, if you're seeing any of the stuff being put out there on Twitter. Junior Tafuna is a standout player down at the Senior Bowl practices. He's a guy that the scouts, the talent evaluators, the draft nicks are highlighting after these practices, after these team periods, after one-on-one pass rush drills, after half line, and saying, this guy is a standout. And when you're called a standout in that moment, when you're called a standout in that setting, what they're saying is this is one of the best college football players in the country, because that's the only people who get invited to this thing. You don't get to be there if you're not one of the best college football players in the country. This is a guy who's being told and is showing, when I put you in a condensed environment, everybody is talented. Everybody is big, strong, and fast. You are still standing out. And you are still a problem to block. And you are blowing things up in the backfield. And that is what NFL teams want right now. So this process, to me, is where it gets most entertaining. Again, out of competition conversation. Correne Reed, awesome player. The question marks around him are what they are. Junior Tafuna, unbelievable player. The only question mark about this guy, because we've all seen how he's built. The only question about this guy is, medically, is he going to be able to hold up? Injury-wise, is he going to be able to hold up? That's what these NFL teams are looking at with Junior Tafuna. He checks all the other boxes. When he goes to the combine, he's going to bench press 225 pounds 35 plus times. He's going to run a sub 540 even at his size. He is going to impress everybody in the 3-cone shuttle drill. He's going to be a guy that at 300 plus pounds has a broad jump that most of the folks in your life at 150 pounds can't do. Like Junior Tafuna has that. He's checking all those boxes. And watching him perform this way at the Senior Bowl practices much more important than the games, as we talked about with Eric Weddle earlier in the week. It's a gratifying experience, because you look at it and you say, gosh, that guy is also, we know he's a great Ute. We knew that he was an all-conference level player. We knew that a healthy version of Junior Tafuna can be dominant in the Pac-12, can be dominant in the Big 12. And now, when you prognosticate, when you project out what he's doing in Mobile, Alabama, if he stays healthy, Junior Tafuna can be a great NFL Ute. And that is so much fun to project for me, James Peterson.
Yeah, it's awesome. And when it comes to Junior, for those of us that watched him for, what was it, he spent 4 years, definitely all of his years here, but it was 3 or 4 years here, and 2 of those Pac-12 championship years where he was a standout. We knew that he was the kind of guy that he's not just that classic defensive tackle that can only stop the run. He's a guy that could rush the passer too from the interior lineman position, which is what you were talking about yesterday when we were talking about the Senior Bowl, is one of the things that NFL scouts and coaches and GMs are looking for from the defensive tackle position. They're not just looking for run stoppers anymore, and we know around here that Junior Tafuna is, he's good at stopping the run as an interior lineman, but he's also potentially a really good pass rusher at the next level as an interior defensive lineman.
It's one of the, Aaron Donald broke everyone's brain in the NFL.
He was a defensive end caliber pass rusher from the inside.
He ruined it for everyone, because now that NFL GMs and coaches know that it's possible to get that level of pass rush and that level of pocket disruption from an interior defensive lineman, everyone wants it. It was not really a reasonable ask for so many years, and it still is an unreasonable ask, but people saw Aaron Donald do it so well for so long, even as a guy who was super undersized that now that's what everyone is looking for. It's like it's the NFL equivalent of what, the super shooting big men have done. I don't know how far back you want to go on it. Like maybe Dirk Nowitzki was the first one who did it for you, but certainly guys like Joel Embiid have some range, and Victor Wembanyama has range and all that kind of stuff. Like now, that was in the 90s, that was an unreasonable ask. No one even thought about the fact that Hakeem Olajuwon should have a 3-point shot. No one was like, Patrick Ewing, dude, you got to be a sniper from beyond the arc. And now everyone in the NBA wants that because there's guys who've shown it's possible. That's what happened with Aaron Donald in the NFL.
Yeah, Shaq can back you in and dunk on your face every time and do a nice little baby hook, basically automatic bucket. But how good is he from 3-point range? That was not the conversation.
That was never, and so now Junior Tafuna he's in this situation where the goalpost has moved. Even like who's the last great defensive tackle that went on to extreme success in the NFL? Like you want to say it's from Utah, like Starlo Tulele had a really super solid career, right? Yeah, he had some presence and the ability to pass rush from the inside, but that's not what people were asking of him. That was not like it wasn't even on the checklist. It was like, oh, that's a bonus point that he can do that. Now it's part of the checklist. So Junior Tafuna's ability to do that is massively important. And he has displayed both of those things at these Senior Bowl practices.
Yeah, and to be clear, we're not saying he's going to be Aaron Donald, but we're saying that he can check that list of a guy who can rush the passer pretty well from the interior on the defensive line.
45 starts in his career, also pretty integral for Junior Tafuna, that over the course of his career at the University of Utah, he had 45 starts. Now, he was constantly disrupting offenses and demanding attention and blocking schemes, and that's something that people could afford to do to him at the college level. It's harder to do at the NFL level. There are actually very few defensive linemen in the NFL that demand that level of attention from opposing offensive lines because it's the best offensive linemen in the world that are blocking you. So to be a true two-man, double-team, two-gapper in the NFL, I don't know how much he's going to have to do it. But I really love to see all the stuff coming out from Junior Tafuna and Karene Reed. Like, I'm not trying to disparage or diminish the accomplishments at practice of Karene Reed. In fact, I'm probably even more impressed by that because he doesn't have the same level of physical dominance at his disposal that somebody like Junior Tafuna does, but he's still warranting a ton of attention. And so part of this process, James, I put the question out on Twitter at Real OC Sports of when I say a Ute that was a better NFL player than college player, who comes to mind? And the answers are exactly who I thought they were going to be. It's never the defensive lineman. It's never the linebackers. It's wide receivers. Most of the answers going all the way back to Steve Smith are Steve Smith, Tim Patrick, most recently Devon Vele. Guys leave this Utah football program as wide receivers. They make it into the NFL where it should be harder. You should have a harder time being successful and somehow, some way put up better. That probably says something about Utah as a program and their emphasis and the way that Kyle Whittingham runs his offenses. But I would predicted that would be the answer. And those were the answers that came in. And I put it out there because I'm wondering if Junior Tafuna is going to be a better college player or a better NFL player, because there's just something about it for some of these guys. They flip another switch. They unlock another level when there's a paycheck on the line, like a big paycheck, like my family and my grandkids don't have to work kind of paycheck. So we'll see how it plays out for Junior Tafuna. But I encourage all of you to jump into the pre-draft process. It is a lot of fun to get into. It really is. The show today and every day brought to you by Les Schwab Tires. Les Schwab Tires has wheels, accessories, tires for whatever it is you drive. Go to the local Les Schwab. Tell them OC sent you. The professionals there will get the job done right the very first time. All right. We're going to check in with Bill Riley, the voice of the Utes. Talk a little running Utes basketball. We'll talk about this as well, the pre-draft process and guys like Junior Tafuna, Correne Reed impressing, and who he thinks besides those two will start making noise and splash when it comes to the workouts and the pro days and all of that. The Sean O'Connell Show, just getting started on a Friday. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Bill's ready.
Rebound Ez.
Here he comes.
He's going to play point forward. Ez in the open floor. Gives it up to Mike out front. 4:40 to play before halftime. Lovering, top of the key, dribbles to the foul line, dribbles down the lane, attacks, and dunks it down with two hands. And he's fouled. Lawson Lovering with a big boy basket.
Land O'Lakes. Lawson just took it from the top of the key, went 1-2. I'm going right to you, Frosh.
Did you just make a butter reference?
I did.
Okay.
I mean, that was straight butter, man. If you're a big guy, you want that all night long.
Straight butter. Lawson Lovering with the and one dunk. 83-62 win over Oklahoma State a few weeks ago at the Huntsman Center. That's the competition again this weekend for the Runnin' Utes. That sound courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. Bill Riley and Sean Mooney on the call. Bill Riley joins us now, the voice of the Utes. This conversation brought to you by our good friends at Advanced Window Products. $2,500 off, 10 windows or more. Give them a call at 801-850-9100. Bill Riley on the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome, Bill. How are you?
Hello, Sean. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. A little shop talk here. for a couple of play-by-play guys, one who's actually well established in the game and another one who just got a chance to do it because he could punch people in the face. But the football versus basketball dynamic, we haven't touched on that this year, I don't think. And it's the same craft, but it feels like, to me, who's never done basketball, by the way, it's actually pretty significantly different on the basketball front. The pace of the game, the fluidity of the game, it's all run of play stuff instead of like a preset situation every single time. So tell me how different the craft is for you, the preparation is for you, all that stuff of calling basketball after we've heard so many of your great football calls as well this year.
It's just a different rhythm. There's not as much preparation that goes into a basketball game as goes into a football game. But, every sport, whether it's fighting, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, they all have a different rhythm to them. And so, it's one of those, I've been doing it forever, so it's hard to explain. But, the preparation, there's 5 guys on each team, 10 on the court, actions right in front of you, not as much stoppage as you have after every play in football. So it's all right there for you. You're closer to the action than you are in football, because in football you're up in a press box, so that's there as well. But it's all pretty much right there for you.
It's cool either way, especially when you get little butter references like we saw or like we heard in that highlight from your guy, Sean Mooney. All right, let's talk some Running Utes basketball here. I do have some questions also. We were just discussing the pre-draft process for the Utah football players, and we'll get into that here in just a second. Running Utes in action again against Oklahoma State. The last highlight was from the Cowboys game. That, look, this is a team you could sweep. You could beat them on the road. You could beat them at home. What's going to be the key in Stillwater for this team tomorrow?
One, protecting the basketball. That goes first and foremost. So you've got that out there. But then after that, it's just kind of a matter of, running your offense and taking what that defense gives you and not turning the ball over. Utah's, I think, a better basketball team. They beat them the last time, but I think they're a better basketball team. They've got to run their offense and not give it up to Oklahoma State.
So this up and down season for Utah basketball has been entertaining on one front. I think frustrating for some fans to watch on other fronts, because we've seen the games where you get the quality contribution from everybody. You get a team that appears to be in sync offensively and defensively. You get your star players acting like star players, and that's kind of the ceiling, and you see what you're capable of. You're capable of beating some pretty good teams, and there's a lot of really good teams in this Big 12 conference in basketball like there was in football. You could beat your rival, and you can do so in a thrilling fashion. And then you can also go and get doubled up by a Houston team that I know is better than you. I know is more talented than you, but this is major college basketball. You should never have a team score almost twice as many points as you. So like this inconsistency, the up and down of a season, how taxing is it on these players? And probably more importantly, why are they so inconsistent even this deep into a season?
I think some of it is the newness of playing together. I know they played a lot of games together, and some of it's the competition that they're playing too. They have to find that rhythm, Sean. No matter what the league is, no matter what level you're playing at, you have to find that good rhythm. And they've just been a little inconsistent finding that. And like you said, Houston is going to be a team, as they've proven, that can beat anybody in the country. And at home, they're really, really difficult. But these are games now, the other night against Cincinnati, this game tomorrow against Oklahoma State, and even the trip with Colorado coming in next week. These are games that Utah has to win. And, because these are teams on their level. And you've got to find that, you've got to build on what you did the other night against Cincinnati, and then come out and do it here against Oklahoma State tomorrow. But, there's a focus, there's a mindset, but there's also a attention to detail thing. And turnovers sometimes are an attention to detail thing, and we'll see if they get that cleaned up tomorrow in Stillwater.
Bill Riley, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, the voice of the Utes, will be on that call as Utah takes on Oklahoma State. You can hear it right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Part of the thing about that inconsistency, and the rhythm is a better way to say it. The rhythm, finding the right rhythm, is getting everybody in the right role and making sure guys know what's expected of them every single night, and knowing that you can get, trusting you can get the contributions you need, especially from the elite players on your roster. We've seen it kind of traded around, it seems. Like tonight is Gabe Madsen's night. 2 nights from now, it'll be Ezra's night. Tomorrow, it's going to be Keanu Dawes who goes off. There hasn't seemingly been one guy that kind of carries the load consistently, always. Is that a good or bad thing for a team? Because you want multiple contributors, but in college basketball, we've seen some of the best teams in the country have a star or 2 stars that are going to give you the buckets and the rebounds and the production on a night in, night out basis.
Yeah, this team doesn't have a star. They've got to do it collectively. But with that being said, Gabe Madsen can get it going. Keanu Dawes, Ezra Sarr, these guys, you want more consistency out of those guys who can get it done for you. Again, we were kind of talking about this on the coaches show last night. They don't have that first team All-American or probably even first team All-Big 12 guy. So there's going to be more of an effort to get it done collectively, if that makes sense. So they've got to get that collective effort, but get it done, kind of get it done as a group, but you've got to find those 3 or 4 guys that can get it done collectively on a given night for you. And it'd be nice if Gabe could kind of get back into that rhythm that we saw him play in for the last couple of years of his career. That's tough, though, because he's at the top of scouting report, and it's a little easier to take shooters out of it, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, the shooting percentage that can vary so widely, it does feel like if there is a constant on this team, and it's not evaluating a star or a non-star, but if there is an individual that you can kind of pencil in what you're going to get from him every night, is it accurate to say that Mongolian Mike is that guy on this roster, that he might be the most constant of the producers?
Yeah, I would say him or Ezra Asar. Those guys have kind of shown it over the last couple of weeks. It'd be nice to get a little bit more out of a few other guys, but Mongolian Mike, at his size, at the position he plays, is a guy that should be able to contribute some points, some assists, and some rebounds, and he's doing that. He's played a little beat up and a little hurt as of late, but that might be somebody that down this middle stretch of the season, if he can kind of get things going a little bit more, that could really benefit Utah.
All right, switching gears here. Had some fun, as I said, talking about this pre-draft process. I've been really biting down on what we're hearing from Mobile, Alabama, and Junior Tafuna showing out at practices. Karene Reed impressing people down at those practices. It's not a huge numbers presence for the Utes in the pre-draft process this year, partially because of mostly, I think, because of the injuries to guys that we would have been talking about very certainly, the Brant Keithys and the Cam Risings, et cetera. But Junior Tafuna is dominating down there. And Karene Reed, despite his lack of measurables, is also having a great week. Your thoughts on both of those guys as pro prospects?
Well, I think they're both pros, and I think this is a week where they get to show it a little bit, Sean. I think Karene Reed's a guy that can find himself on a special teams and is a linebacker somewhere. And Junior could certainly be a rotational defensive end. They come from a pro-style program. They come from, a background where that's that. And they both have great motors. They're smart. They're intelligent football players. And you've kind of got that Utah stamp of approval, too. The Utes have proven in recent years they can get that stuff done. So I think both those guys, I would be shocked if those guys aren't on NFL rosters. And this week could really solidify that for them, along with a good day at the Big 12 Pro Day.
For Brant Keithy, it's if the route is taken, it's going to be the circuitous route. It's going to be the path less traveled, because the injury and the rehab process is going to take him out of the traditional, all right, you're going to show up at Pro Day, you're probably going to get a combine invite. Add to that level of complication, he's a tweener size-wise. And I know that there are plenty of tight ends in the league now that are just wide receivers, and that might be his role eventually. But for Brant Keithy specifically, what does his path to the NFL look like right now in your mind?
I think he has to show he's healthy. I think he has to have a good workout for some teams, and I think he'll have to go earn it. It's hard for me to see him being drafted right now, just based on the injury history. I think there's a path there, but I think he's going to have to show NFL teams that he's 100% healthy and ready to go. The injury history has been tough for Brant.
I throw the same question out there for Cam Rising. I don't know if his name's in the hat right now for a pro opportunity. It's been radio silence. He does have another year of college eligibility if that's a route he wants to explore. It does not appear that would be something that happens at the University of Utah with the spring roster out there, his name not on it, etc. So I guess same question with Cam Rising. If he's going to be taking a shot at the NFL, similar to what we're seeing with Brant Kuithe?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. I think you've just got to show that you're healthy and, what you can do. Quarterback position's just tough. And so I think it'll be even tougher for him. But I think it's the exact same route Brant is. I think first and foremost, they've got to show that they're healthy and they can do what it takes to be a football player.
With the NFL playoffs, how conflicted is the diehard Kansas City Chiefs fan Bill Riley watching an AFC Championship game and seeing Dalton Kincaid with an opportunity to haul in a pass that might have changed the complexion of the game, and unfortunately not being able to do so because you are a Chiefs fan, but I know you got love for Kincaid as well. I would have
been very happy for Dalton, but I'm very happy for the Chiefs advancing to where they are right now. I was happy for Cole to get his first career start and play pretty well too.
But we talked about that with Weddle when we had him on earlier this week. I mean, to get press ganged into starting service on that stage, he had great moments in that game. He had moments he'd probably like back in that game. But the overall takeaway seems to be that Cole Bishop showed that he's not just a player in the NFL. He could be a starter and a multiple-year player at the NFL level.
Absolutely. I'm happy for him to get that opportunity, and I think Buffalo's going to have some roster turnover this year, so that might bode well for him even more moving forward.
Before I let you go, the Super Bowl is, and we'll have you on again before the Super Bowl actually happens, but a week and a couple days away from the Chiefs taking a shot at 3 in a row. What is this moment for you as a Chiefs fan?
I'm thrilled. This is the best run of my lifetime, clearly, for Chiefs football. And I'm just kind of soaking it all in and enjoying it all right now. And I know at some point in time it will come to an end, but as of right now, I'm just enjoying it and having fun with it, Sean. You know how that goes. You've been a Niners fan and saw a lot of great football over the years too. So I'm just having some fun with it and letting it go from there. So, hey, I've got to run because I've got to go catch a plane, but I'll talk to you next week.
Safe travels. Have a great call. Thanks for your time as always.
Thanks, Sean.
That's Bill Riley. You got to hop on a plane. You got to get out there to Stillwater and call a basketball game as your running Utes have an opportunity to do the season sweep in the home and away with Oklahoma State. And as Bill said, these are the games. Like, it's fine to lose to Houston. It is. I know you're not supposed to be okay with losses on any level. It's okay to lose to Houston. I don't think it's okay to lose to Houston by 34 points. I don't think it's okay for Houston to double up and almost, not almost, to embarrass you. I don't think that's okay. But it's all right if you're going up against an elite team on the national level to not come out on top. You have to win these games. You have to say, this is a program that's on our level right now. Cincinnati's a program that's on our level right now. We got to win over them. We've got to build some of this momentum. You have to find that consistency that has been so elusive for Utah men's basketball this season. It just has to happen at some point. And if it's going to happen, it's going to happen against competition that is on your level, against rosters that are built more like yours, against teams that don't have a couple of NBA guys, a couple of draft lottery guys. That's the most likely place for you to find that consistency, to find that rhythm, as the word that Bill Riley kept using, I think probably fits. You can hear that game right here tomorrow on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Reminder to all of you also that the Cash Kickoff continues on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Text the word SPREE to 508-777-1000 for your chance to win. That's 508-777-1000, and the word is SPREE, like the old delicious candies. Spree to 508-777-1000. And as long as we're talking Running Utes, if you want tickets to a Running Utes home game, text the word Utes to 33986 for a chance to win a pair of tickets. The next home game will be next week, next Wednesday, taking on the Colorado Buffaloes at the Huntsman Center. You can also grab your tickets at utahtickets.com. Sean O'Connell Show continues with a little bit of hot lunch next. NBA All-Star rosters are revealed. James Peterson will tell you who he thinks was snubbed, the injustice being done in the NBA All-Star selection. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Sean O'Connell Show continuing here on a Friday. Fun show for you today. We just talked with Bill Riley. We're getting into some hot lunch right now. And then, of course, more football, basketball, and Utah Hockey Club discussion as Outlaws back in the running. We'll get to that in about 15 minutes. James Peterson, where are you at on all-star games at this point with your pro sports?
I don't care near as much about the game, although I'll still watch it because just in the off chance that it's competitive in NBA and MLB in particular. But it's been so often not competitive and that I've soured on it just like most people. But as far as the selection process, I'm very invested in who should be in, who shouldn't. This year feels like they probably got it right. But I definitely over the years have been very invested in who's on the team, not as much invested in the game, although I do still turn it on.
So you're going to see some Jazz in the Rising Stars portion of this. You're not getting any Jazz representation in the actual game, it doesn't look like. The fascinating thing for me about these all-star games is how every league so desperately wants to make them matter and so desperately, is willing to make format changes and do like little draft games, like let's not have it just be East versus West anymore. We'll have team LeBron versus team whoever. And let's, in Major League Baseball, we're going to have the winner matter. Oh, maybe we shouldn't have the winner matter. The home run derby, I think, is always going to save Major League Baseball's weekend. Now guys in the NFL on the football front, guys who played in the All-Star game, the Pro Bowl, don't even want the Pro Bowl to be a thing anymore. I mean, guys who were Pro Bowlers themselves are actively making fun of what the Pro Bowl has become. So the NFL is desperately in need of improvement for their equivalent of an All-Star game or just an abandonment of that All-Star game completely. Because J.J. Watt, I think earlier this week, James, was like, if you're getting down to like the fifth alternates, it's not a Pro Bowl anymore. Call it the Participation Bowl. And there's so much.
That's
so
what's
much
tough about. Sorry to cut you off. That's what's tough about the Pro Bowl in particular is when you see guys who were spot starters as a quarterback get an invite to the Pro Bowl because they were an alternate and they only started like 3 games, let alone put up great numbers. It's like, man, this is a joke.
I mean, as great as it is, because there are still somehow, I don't know how agents still pull this off, but there are still a bunch of incentives written into guys' contracts. If you're a Pro Bowler, you get extra whatever, right? With how unimportant the game is now and how convoluted the process is for being named to the Pro Bowl. I mean, Tyler Huntley's agent wrote something into him being a Pro Bowl quarterback last year. No one ever thought Tyler Huntley was going to be a Pro Bowl quarterback. I don't know how much money that gets you, but like there's also money on the line in the game itself, which was put in there to incentivize guys to actually play and to play hard. But it was the Dan Patrick show earlier this week. Max Crosby, I think, was on. And he was talking about, they asked him about his first Pro Bowl appearance and like, how do you even know how hard you're supposed to play? And the players don't even know. Guys who make it for the first time are just like, wait, so it's like 2-hand touch? Like everyone's going to get mad at me, which is a funny thing because
how do I hit you?
I know this thought process very well as a longtime scout team player in my collegiate career. Like you don't know. Coaches want you to go hard. The players, the starters that you're going against hate you if you go too hard. You're a scout team all-star, which is like the worst thing that you can be in a football program. And so you're just like in this no man's land, can't win, can't lose. Like the coaches want you to give 100% effort, but if you do, your teammates ostracize you and can't stand you. So you're like trying to make it look like you're going as hard as you can while also accommodating the starter who's got bumps and bruises from actually playing in the competition. To hear an all-pro level, like a real full-time starter for an elite player have to go through that process is actually pretty hilarious to me when Max Crosby's just like, yeah, I didn't know if I gave a real pass rush if the guys were going to get mad at me. Yeah, that's how my career was in college. And he didn't. That's that's unfamiliar territory for people like that. But the All-Star game situation in the NFL is untenable in my situation. The Pro Bowl, as much as I enjoyed attending multiple Pro Bowls and the festivities around that and stuff, the players themselves have dismissed this. And I don't know how a league can salvage it if the players themselves dismiss it. I think maybe a better situation, James, hear me out on this. Make the Reese's Senior Bowl the Pro Bowl. Make the East-West Shrine Game or whatever, make a college all-star game of obvious NFL draft prospects. Make that the Pro Bowl experience. Make guys that are definitely going to be invited to the combine, definitely going to hear their names called, or as definitely as it can be. Make one of those games the Pro Bowl. Like, play that on the Sunday between the AFC and NFC championship games and the Super Bowl. Bridge that gap on major television in an important setting with NFL coaches involved, with NFL players, the elite NFL players. You still have guys that are decorated as whatever, Pro Bowlers, All-Stars, All-Pro. You got to call them Pro Bowlers still, I guess. And instead of expecting them to go out there and go through the motions of playing in a game, have them go out there and coach up the college guys. Have them go out there and run some drills against them at the very least. Like, integrate the prospects with the dudes who don't want to be playing in the game but do want to be called Pro Bowlers. Find a way to bridge that gap. It would bring more attention to a thing like the Senior Bowl or like a college all-star game, because there's 3 or 4 of them and they're not given, I don't think, proper broadcast attention. Only folks like me who are college football junkies and pre-draft process junkies are really paying close attention to it. Bring that into the actual NFL official process, and I think people will pay more attention. But you got to get some level of competition in these all-star games, and at the NFL level, you're not getting any right now with the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I like that idea, and maybe you have some players, some current players who have an interest in broadcasting, and maybe you give them broadcast opportunities too. You make this showcase the college all-stars who are entering the draft process, but also giving these current players chances to do some assistant coaching, do some broadcasting that they don't have a ton of chance to do during the season because they're currently NFL players. I know that almost every player has a podcast now, but maybe there's some that want to be a color analyst, want to try that out. You give those guys a shot, give those guys a shot to be sideline reporters, maybe, and maybe that's the role for the Pro Bowlers, NFL Pro Bowlers in the new Pro Bowl that you're talking about with around the Senior Bowl or the East-West Shrine Game. I like that idea.
Back to the NBA All-Star Game, as the reserves were announced. Let's see, they'll do a live 2025 NBA All-Star Draft during the TNT pregame show on Thursday. So the following names: Giannis Antetokounmpo, Donovan Mitchell, Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, Jason Tatum. Those guys are the Eastern Conference starters. And then the reserves: Jaylen Brown, Pascal Siakam, Darius Garland, Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Dame Lillard, Tyler Herro. Those guys are the reserves. They're going to be divided into the full name list is going to be divided into 4 teams for this NBA All-Star weekend. So Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Shea SGA, LeBron, and Nikola Jokic. Those guys are the Western Conference starters: Anthony Edwards, Anthony Davis, James Harden, Jaren Jackson Jr., Alperen Sengun, Jalen Williams, Victor Wembanyama. Those guys are the reserves. So East and West, your all-star teams, are going to be divided via live draft into 4 all-star teams. Little round-robin action going on. It's an unrecognizable format, James.
Yeah, it's
all-star games in crisis.
Yeah, they're doing what they have been experimenting with in the Rising Stars. Used to be the Rising Stars game was rookie versus sophomores, Rising Stars game. It's been the Rising Stars Challenge the last handful of years, where it's been this 4-team mini tournament, games to 40. Whoever wins then plays the remaining 2 teams, and they're the all-star champion. They've decided to try that as the main event, which, yeah, I'm with you, completely unrecognizable. As a bit of a basketball purist, I don't necessarily like it, but I also know that all the players, all the all-stars had to do the last 4 or 5 years, and a few years beyond that even, was to show that they cared and cared to play competitively, cared to play actual basketball and not just jack up half-court shots with no defense. And we would still have a 48-minute game, 4-quarter game, that we all used to like when the players cared. So when Kevin Durant said, when this new format was announced, that he hates it and why would we do this? It's a joke. It's like, well, KD, if you'd have gotten your friends to play better and to play like they actually cared, we'd still have a regular basketball game. So they had to make a drastic change like this. I'm not sure it's going to have much traction, but they couldn't do the regular game because the players showed they don't care.
And I'm actually okay with players at the NBA level just being like, all right, just put up some wild shots, run a bunch of alley-oops, and then give me 5 minutes at the end of the game of real competition. Like, I don't care if the All-Star game score is 100
used to be. Yeah.
To 145. Like, I don't care. That's fine because it's festivities. It's a celebration. All-Star Weekend in Salt Lake City was about like fan engagement and the players being out there in the community and everyone getting to buy some new gear and to go to a building where you could see all the elite talent in one place. Like that's fine. But now trying to do this, like this thing where people are going to show up expecting, right? I want to see all these guys playing basketball. I want to see East versus West. That's what I know this to be. And instead, what you're going to get is like, oh, wait, there's 4 teams now? Why are there 4 teams? Also, the price of admission for an NBA All-Star game is embarrassing. For the level of competition that you actually get to see is absolutely inexcusable. It was like $1,000+ for the worst ticket at the Delta Center when the All-Star game was here.
Yeah, if you were someone that wasn't able to go and you're bummed out about that, you had a better experience watching at home. You did. Like I fortunately through this job had a chance to get a media credential, and I was in the arena, and I thought it'd be this great check off the bucket list thing. It was not a great experience. We were up in the nosebleeds, where a lot higher than we normally are, and couldn't see, like, the halftime show that was with Post Malone would have been awesome, except our seats were behind the stage. So we got to hear it. And I'm like, I would have had a better time watching this halftime show on TV where I could actually see the stage and see what's going on, the great light show that they put on. It's a better experience watching from home. The other thing, it was remarkably quiet, OC, and I remember watching games on TV and going, they do a great job of having some funny moments with players mic'd up and stuff, and I'm like, why not have those mics be over the speakers in the arena? Because that would make it a way better experience in the arena, especially when no one's playing hard at all, even for 5 minutes, like you said, for the game to entertain you. Like, let us hear the player's personality like you do on the TV broadcast. So yeah, it's a much better experience. Next time you're like, I want to go to an All-Star game, and next time's in Salt Lake City, I want to spend my savings on a ticket. Just watch from home.
All right. So you could cancel the NBA All-Star game and no one would care. You could certainly cancel the Pro Bowl and nobody would care. I think everyone wants the home run derby bad enough that people would care about the Major League Baseball All-Star weekend being canceled. Players don't care anymore. So all-star games in crisis. I don't have a long-term solution for anybody, but that's where we're at right now when it comes to these all-star games. We're way over time. We got to take a break. We'll come back. Utah Outlaws is back in the running, back on the table for your NHL team, for your franchise identity. We got to get into how convoluted and crusty and messy this whole team naming situation has gotten with the Smith Entertainment Group. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. John O'Connell Show here on a Friday, marching closer to your weekend. We hope to send you into that weekend informed, entertained, and otherwise happier than you might have been if you hadn't listened to the show today. James Peterson producing. I'm Sean O'Connell. We're going to get into yet another left turn, a curveball thrown by the Smith Entertainment Group in the hockey club naming situation. Before we get there, it is time for a leaderboard update from the PGA. James Peterson has it.
Yeah, our PGA Tour leaderboard update. The Pebble Beach Open out in California, brought to you by Uinta Golf. Experience the future of performance with Callaway. New shaping materials and AI 10X Smart Face, delivering up to 8 yards longer with even more forgiveness, available at Uinta Golf. Looking at the leaderboard here, Sepp Straka, big name there. I know you know Sepp Straka, OC. He's the leader right now, 11 under. Russell Henley and our guy Tony Finau tied for second, 2 shots back at 9 under. Tony is 4 under for the day through his first 6 holes, so working on a great day at Pebble Beach. Rory McIlroy is right behind them at 8 under, tied for 5th, along with some of the bigger names tied for 8th at 7 under. Justin Rose, Patrick Cantlay, Shane Lowry, some of those names in there. But yeah, how about that? Tony Finau, 2 shots off the lead early here, day 2, OC.
All right. Good luck to Tony. As always, people pulling for him. Pebble Beach, by the way, beautiful part of the country. I'm not the biggest golf guy, so that makes me not the biggest golf course guy. But I've spent some time at Pebble Beach. My grandparents actually met in that area of the world, and fun fact, we scattered my grandfather's ashes off of one of the beaches on Pebble Beach golf course. So just a really beautiful part of the world. And if that's where you're working, you're already winning, Tony Finau. That's your job. Good for you. Again, that PGA Tour leaderboard update brought to you by Uinta Golf. All right, James. So we talked about this yesterday. We're probably going to talk about it on Monday. We'll talk about it as many times as the changes are made in the process. But the naming situation for the Utah Hockey Club, which might just stay the Utah Hockey Club.
One of the options, yeah.
Wasatch has been eliminated as an option.
Mercifully.
Thank goodness.
Mercifully eliminated from contention.
Although I actually loved the fact that it was Utah Hockey Club, Wasatch, or Mammoth, because there's no way Wasatch could take any of the votes that would otherwise go to the Utah Mammoth. Now,
yeah. If you're
Outlaws
a big Mammoth guy, as we know you are, OC, you were like, yes, keep Wasatch in there because Mammoth's going to win.
Okay, so let me tell you how in I am on Mammoth being the eventual name of this franchise. Because we're not going with any of my great ideas, Mammoth was the next best thing. And the branding stuff that we've seen looks really cool. The mock-ups that we've seen, multiple out there, amateurs doing it, pros doing it. I have not attended the game and done the in-arena vote yet, and we've been told that process is very high stakes and high security, which is great. But the leaked image of the kind of side profile Mammoth with the exaggerated tusks, for me, great. Like, that is a great logo. I will buy that sweater tomorrow. I want that patch on a hat. Like, that's perfect for me. I know that not everyone feels that way, but it's wonderful. But I'm so deep in on the Mammoth being the name that I reached out to a guy who's gone viral recently. I've been following him for years. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast a few times, which is how he got a lot of fame. But I've been following this guy's exploits up in Alaska for probably 5 years now, and he is a gold miner who has found this cache of bones, James, on his mining land. What is that, like a prospect stake? I don't know what you call it officially, but they years ago stumbled upon ancient remains of megafauna and who knows what else. And they started like just digging it up as amateur paleontologists, archaeologists, because there's definitely human remains coming out of there too. So I say archaeologists, but neither here nor there. So this guy has like mammoth skeletons. He famously talked about how one of his friends found a frozen mammoth. They ate some of it because it was so well preserved. They cooked it up and ate it. Like, this dude is like the king of mammoths, right? So I reached out to him and was like, hey, if this team becomes the mammoth, we got to get you down here and we got to integrate your mammoth finds somehow with Utah having mammoth as a hockey team. And his response was, it's going to be the mammoth because human beings are geared to love mammoths. His belief is, if you pay attention to what he's like, he thinks that ancient peoples domesticated mammoths, and like he's found some, I guess, evidence in this whole process that solidifies that belief for him. So I reached out, James. I'm so deep in the mammoth world right now that I reached out to one of the foremost practical mammoth experts, a man who has handled more mammoth tusk, mammoth bone, mammoth skull than pretty much anyone alive on planet Earth ever. And I'm trying to get him down here to Salt Lake City.
Absolutely. We need that guy on the show to talk about why why humans are so geared to love mammoths. Like, that's amazing. Also, the other great tie to mammoths we have here and mammoth remains that we have here, the Fairview Mammoth Discovery Site, Fairview, Utah. Did you know they have an actual, like, they have an actual mammoth skeleton in a library in Fairview, basically in their library, the museum attached to the library? Like, that's the other reason we've found mammoth remains here, and we have them on display in places like Fairview. Like, that's another reason to embrace the mammoth.
One of the most complete specimens, most complete skeletons ever found of a Columbian mammoth is that one that is down there in Fairview. So yes, like, absolutely, all the way. Have them, recreate the one that was found on Utah soil.
Yes,
and put it up, curate an exhibit in the Delta Center as part of the revamp and remodel, because it does seem like maybe that dual use arena is going to be more of a long-term situation than getting a new one for basketball and a new one for hockey. They've reached some snags on the development of separate projects. So so now Outlaw back on the table. My question for you, James
also
Peterson.
Also a pretty good name. I'm not completely anti-Outlaw.
Yeah, I'm not anti. I'm pretty good on it. Our own Porter Larson.
That's his favorite.
He produces the show for Spence Checketts. He's pretty deep in the outlaw world because he's related to like Butch Cassidy somehow.
I think Porter Rockwell is a distant relative, if I'm not mistaken. One of the reasons why his name is Porter. So yeah.
The Danites, the Utah Danites. Let's go. So look, do you think that we talked about this yesterday, James, and it was like 100% for sure Mammoth was going to be taking the cake over Wasatch. Is there enough division? I ran a poll again, and still Mammoth dominated. But I think that people that respond to my polls probably like listening to my show and probably think, at least in some ways, similar to how I do. So
it's a perfect sample. Don't sell yourself short. It's a perfect sample. Whoever votes on your polls is actually representative of people who care about the name for the hockey team.
So when it was Wasatch, it was like 90% of the respondents said that it would be Mammoth. When I add Outlaws instead of Wasatch, it's 60% in favor of Mammoth, 33% in favor of Outlaws, and still about 7% who wanted to remain Utah Hockey Club. Does Outlaws have a shot here? I lost James. I don't know what happened.
Oh, hey, I'm back.
Oh, sorry.
Apologies. You cut out there for a second. Give me the question you had again.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what's going on audio wise. I said 60% now in favor of Mammoth, 33% in favor of Outlaws. When it was Mammoth versus Wasatch, it was like a 90%
Yeah.
in favor of Mammoth. So Outlaws building some momentum. Is this going to be like an effective Outlaws campaign? Because now people are going in and the voting continues in arena. Now people are going in and you can vote again because now you're talking about different candidates. Biden's off the ballot and it's Kamala now. It's Outlaws instead of Wasatch. So you're going in there, and we see Outlaws start to outpace Mammoth?
I don't think so. I think that Mammoth is going to. I think that Mammoth's going to win out. I don't know if it'll be 63-33, 66-33, whatever it was. I think it'll be probably closer than that because a lot of people like the Outlaws in that first vote. It got through the first couple of votes. So I know that it's a popular choice, but I think Mammoth is just that much more popular. Now, again, what it really comes down to is what does Ryan Smith and Smith Entertainment Group and what do the marketing team that they no doubt have spent millions of dollars on to try to get this name and get these logos, get this brand off the floor. What do they want? Would they rather have Mammoth versus Outlaws? Because no matter what the fan vote is, if they like one of those more than the other, if they like Utah Hockey Club more than those two, they're going to go with that name.
Yeah, correct. By the way, the assumption, and I was on board with this, the idea that there was like millions of dollars probably spent on the branding. I think that all those millions were spent on the Yeti front. I really do believe that. I think that Smith Entertainment Group put so many eggs in the Yeti basket and was chasing that opportunity down that I think this has been kind of poorly executed since. And it's fun for all of us to talk about, and I'm okay with it. But just the Utah Hockey Club jerseys and branding, like you couldn't buy the sweaters as merchandise for 6 months after the team was created because it takes time. There's a runway. You have to lead up to executing these kinds of things. Now that you're pivoting on like a day-to-day basis, the dude who's all about like data compilation and the analytics of survey results and whatnot, the fact that this is how the process has gone is somewhat comical to me. Again, I'm going to be happy with Mammoth if that's what we get. I'll be fine with Outlaws if that's what you get. But most teams do spend the millions of dollars on branding and a rollout and making sure that everything, you do the peer-reviewed studies, for lack of a better term. And this has been like a totally crowdsourced venture. I'm fine with not spending millions of dollars to try and develop new Outlaw logos because I keep scrolling on my Twitter feed and like your average Jimmy or Joe or Sally or Jane that has some Photoshop abilities or some Adobe Illustrator abilities has put together some really cool stuff. So I don't think you need to pay some like big time firm to do this for you. If I'm Ryan Smith and company, I'm doing the same thing that I'm doing, James. I'm doing the same thing that you're doing. And I'm putting Utah Outlaws into the search bar on Twitter. And I'm scrolling to see what like high school student has come up with the coolest logo. And I'm doing the same thing with Mammoth. And I'm doing the same thing with Utah Hockey Club stuff. And then I'm buying that creation from them instead of going the complicated route. But I think that they put all that investment into Yeti because now we're getting left turns and curveballs. And maybe tomorrow Utah Hockey Club is dropped. Or maybe tomorrow they're like an executive veto on one of these Outlaw or Mammoth names and something else happens. It's such a strange process that we're going through, but I'm not complaining about it because it's kind of fun. It just doesn't make sense for someone whose billions were made on survey and survey results.
Yeah, it's more than a little bit disappointing that that's the case, but I'm not up in arms about it. Like as long as whatever comes out of it is a good name, a good brand that the community can rally behind, which it always ends up being the case. I'm going to be okay with it. But yeah, it's been like, what are we doing here? I thought this was your thing. I thought crowdsourcing was your thing. And yet all these left turns and twists, and we're going to take this one out of the running. We're going to put this one in. Oh, we're going to switch them. Like, I don't know. It feels like who's steering this ship here?
Team Mammoth forever here on the Sean O'Connell Show.
Yeah, and I've joined Team Mammoth as well. I wasn't there at the beginning, but I'm here now.
All right. We're glad to have you.
If I can be if you're willing to welcome me in, I will. I want to be here.
Yes, we're happy to have you on the bandwagon, James. All right, got to take a break. That conversation about the Utah Hockey Club branding brought to you by friends at Mountainland Supply. Visit mountainlandsupply.com or visit one of their physical locations for any building, remodel project, whatever you have going on to improve your home or property. mountainlandsupply.com. Lots to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. Don't go anywhere. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Lindsey Rhodes, Summer Sports NFL Insider, going to join us at the top of our third hour, coming up in about 25 minutes to preview the approaching Super Bowl. Maybe she has some solutions for how the NFL Pro Bowl and the Pro Bowl games, I guess is what they're called now, can be improved. We'll talk pre-draft process with her as well. That's coming up, as I said, in about 25 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show. James, we got to touch on something that you addressed in your update there, and hopefully all of you are appreciative of James Peterson's updates. He works hard to make sure to cram a lot of information into a short amount of time. Arch Manning, we talked about the Devin Dampier Heisman odds at plus 15,000. Jake Retzlaff is plus 15,000. That was according to the DraftKings Sportsbook. If I look up the DraftKings Heisman Trophy odds, like the preseason, way too early Heisman Trophy odds, as you said, Arch Manning is the guy that we talk about as having the highest, or the most likely odds, the shortest odds to win next year's Heisman Trophy. This is the most ridiculous thing that has happened in a college football offseason in recent memory. And there's I'm not trying to hate on Arch Manning by any stretch of the imagination, but this is where our confirmation bias brains and our familiarity seeking brains are so ridiculous. Look at everybody else that has decent Heisman Trophy odds. I mean, you take like the top 10 guys, 8 of those top 10 are what, James? They're returning starters.
Yeah,
they're people.
Some of them started multiple years.
Yes. Arch Manning is the only guy, and by the way, the only Heisman Trophy preseason odds, the only person to warrant this kind of Heisman Trophy hype in recent years who was a backup in the previous season. Now, we know why he was a backup, all right? Because they had previously the highest-ranked quarterback recruit ever in Quinn Ewers, a guy who is a bona fide talent, a dyed-in-the-wool starter. There's also an element of the Arch Manning situation here that I don't think is talked about enough, where I think the family he comes from, while being the most talented group of quarterbacks to share the same DNA probably ever, they're also relatively old school and guys that don't have a problem with Arch sitting and growing and learning and developing. And I think they're pointed in that effort. Like, they make a point of the fact that, no, we can be patient with this Arch thing. They're on the opposite end of the spectrum of a lot of individuals, a lot of families now that are like, well, if my son is going to go to the NFL, you need to be starting him now. I think that Cooper Manning and Peyton Manning and Eli Manning and the Arch Senior, the grandfather, are looking at it and saying, you know what? Like, this dude's getting drafted no matter what. This guy is going to be an NFL player. You want to keep some tread on those tires? That's fine with us. I think that's another reason why him being a career backup so far is not something to sweat about. But this is what we do as sports fans. We recognize the last name. We know what those genetics mean. We've seen some of his game tape. And look, he's a good football player. And all accounts are that he's got the work ethic and the intelligence and everything else to make you a great player. But the dude hasn't started full time. And he is the Heisman Trophy favorite? When is the last time a first-year starter won a Heisman Trophy in college football?
Yeah, 2-3 starts under his belt is all, and then a handful of other snaps besides that. All last season, right? Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I've ever heard of anyone like that. Maybe there is someone, but that seems pretty unprecedented for me.
Okay, so I'm just going to go back through the most, like, the Heisman Trophy is not a one and done type award. Okay. It's not, it has never been. but let's just take a look as an informative exercise here. Let's just take a look at the most recent Heisman Trophy winners. Okay, Travis Hunter this past year was unique, special, incredible, two-way player, did some unprecedented things in college football. It was a very, very close race in the Heisman Trophy conversation this year between Travis Hunter and Ashton Genty. Travis Hunter, not a one-year starter, or not a first-time, full-time starter, nor was Ashton Genty, who was the runner-up, right? Jaden Daniels, James. Was Jaden Daniels a starter just that lone year, that Heisman Trophy year at LSU?
Absolutely not. We know that. We're very familiar with that. He spent his first couple of years at ASU, and he even was that. Didn't he have one more year at LSU, or is that just his only year at LSU?
Yes. Yeah,
So
no, that wasn't his only year at LSU.
No, so he had that was his second year at LSU even. So yeah.
That was his fourth year starter, his third year starting in college football. Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams won it as a sophomore. Caleb Williams has been a full-time starter for most of a freshman season, and obviously that was his second year. Bryce Young won it as a sophomore. We're talking about another guy who already had some experience under his belt. Devontae Smith had started games. It's a totally different deal at playing wide receiver. So this is probably damaging to my point because it's an apples and oranges comparison when you're talking about a wide receiver. But quarterbacks winning this thing: Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, Johnny Manziel. These are guys who were multiple year starters before they won the trophy. And Arch Manning has the shortest odds to win a Heisman.
Yeah, it's wild. Can we also look at now? This is an ESPN article that I pulled that from for the update. So it's according to ESPN Bet. Maybe I'm sure Arch is still the favorite in the other sports books, but the odds might differ. But can we also look at Garrett Nussmeier being second and go, like, are we serious about this? Did anyone watch Garrett Nussmeier last year? That he gave no indication that he was Heisman Trophy caliber. None.
That feels to me like a nod to, we think that he's going to be quarterbacking the best team in the country. Like, good player on the best team.
Is LSU?
That's what it feels like.
Is LSU considered going to be the best team in the country? Am I missing something there? They're usually good.
No. Ohio State they're talking about Ohio State, and they're talking about Texas, which again is where this conversation is coming from.
Nussmeier's LSU's quarterback.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
so
it's wild.
Ohio State is talked about it, and Texas is talked about as being one of the best teams in the country. LSU has, again, a roster full of NFL caliber talent, and that sometimes lends itself to them being a great team, and we'll see. So I think that's probably where that comes from. Also, I do need to correct myself here. Johnny Manziel, on that list of quarterbacks I just gave you, Johnny Manziel is, I guess, the evidence that it could happen that a guy in his first years of full-time starter could win the Heisman Trophy. That's what happened with Johnny Manziel. But we're looking, the point I'm trying to make is, we're looking so hard for something that confirms our hype on Arch Manning when there's a bunch of guys who are returning starters, established quarterbacks, and fit the mold of what we have done with Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks to a T, but still everyone says it's Arch Manning's award to lose. And by the way, that bias is going to persist in voters through the entirety of the preseason, through the entirety of the season, and presumably into the voting as long as he stays healthy and Texas is winning football games.
Absolutely, yeah. And what makes me, not to belabor the Garrett Nussmeier thing that too much longer, but another thing that's kind of head-scratching about him being in the top 5 even is the guys behind him are Nico Imaliava, Clemson's Cade Klubnik, Penn State's Drew Aller. These guys all fit what you've been talking about, experienced quarterbacks who are very talented, played for really good teams, all of them behind Arch Manning, all of them behind Garrett Nussmeier. I would say all of them were probably better than Nussmeier last year, for example. And yet those guys are behind Manning and Nussmeier in the ESPN bet odds to win the Heisman. So it really interesting starting odds there. And yeah, it really does. The Arch Manning part really does seem to be, we want him to be good so bad that we're going to hype him up like this before he's really had a chance to show us much of anything.
You know who it sucks most for? It sucks most for Arch Manning, because he's at the point in his career right now where he feels he has to address the hype, and he does it the right way. This kid is so impressive, but he's like, yeah, I get extra attention because of my name. It's not his fault. He knows it's not his fault, but he acknowledges that, and it's just like that. I probably don't warrant this level of attention and preseason hype based on just my gameplay. Not when you compare it to the accomplishments of those other guys that you're talking about. And by the way, you might see a wide receiver win it again next year if Jeremiah Smith continues to build the hype that he's got. I mean, Arch Manning's gonna have to really have a great year, because a healthy Jeremiah Smith is going to have like 3 200-yard games and 8 100-yard games as a wide receiver, and it might be enough for that young man to take down a Heisman Trophy. But
he's the top non-quarterback in ESPN bets preseason odds. So yeah.
So anyway, that I didn't plan on doing that segment, but you mentioned it in the update, and it's one of those things we're so bad sometimes as a sports observing public about just being like, hey, just give me a name I can recognize, and then let's freak out about that for 7 months before the football season starts. All right, Utah Jazz were in action last night against the Minnesota Timberwolves. We'll talk about the performance there and, of course, give you the tanking update after another Utah Jazz performance. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, it's time. You've been waiting for it, and now it is here. A tanking update about your Utah Jazz, who found a way, against all odds, to lose by double digits yet again, this time to the Minnesota Timberwolves. James, the tank effort is going swimmingly.
It is. It is. Now, last night was almost one of those win-win scenarios in the tank effort because, as we've mentioned before in past tank updates, the Jazz also, and Jazz fans also would like the T-Wolves to lose enough to not be in the playoff race. So it wouldn't have been so bad if the Jazz had won that game last night. But bird in the hand versus two in the bush, you always take the bird in the hand, OC. The bird in the hand is your own draft odds.
Okay.
If you're too worried, if you try to get cute and you're like, maybe we can get both, you maybe start sliding down too far with your own draft pick. And so probably better that they lost 138-113, of course, last night at the Delta Center. Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, Joe Ingles now on that T-Wolves team, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who was part of the Jazz 2022 team for the last half of the year. Their returns to the Delta Center, Joe Ingles with a great ovation, and a loss for the Jazz. So great night for Jazz fans all around. The tank race standings.
Did Jazz fans bully the Minnesota Timberwolves coaching staff into putting Joe Ingles in the game by chanting Joe? The game was decided, and they get Joe up off the bench. Was that
must have been, that had to have been what it was. He got a fantastic ovation. I think the Jazz were at the free throw line when it happened too, so the crowd was going nuts, like Chick-fil-A was on the line, like free chicken was on the line, while their own guy was shooting free throws, because that's how much we love Joe Ingles around here. So that's probably what happened.
That's the perfect storm of enthusiasm for Utah Jazz fans. All right, so what are those tank race standings for now?
Tank race standings. Wizards still leading, and I don't think anyone's going to catch them, OC. They're still 4.5 games up on the Jazz at 6-41. 6-41.
Gosh, you're bad.
Yeah, I think we're gonna. I think it's pretty safe to say they are going to get your best draft odds, or tied for the best draft odds, because all the top three get the same odds. But they're gonna have the worst record in the league at the end of the season. Jazz still in the number 2 position, 10-36 now. They've lost 8 in a row. Quite a streak for the Jazz and their tank efforts. Pelicans still in third at 12-36, a game behind the Jazz, so that's still pretty tight. But the Jazz up 2 games in the win column, so that's not nothing. Hornets at 12-32, they're 3 games back of the Jazz for the 2 spots, 7.5 games back of the Wizards. And again, Jazz up 2 games in the win column against the Hornets. The Nets and Raptors virtually tied at 5-6, 15 wins apiece. Nets 15-33, Raptors 15-32. 8.5 and 9 games back of the Wizards, OC, at only 15 wins on the season.
Wow. It's fun. I love the up, whether they're up or in a race or they're down in a race, because we live in the upside down right now. The Utah Jazz, when we're talking about them being up, they're actually down,
they are down. Up is down. Shout out to Jack Sparrow. 3 games separate spots 2 through 4. That's the Jazz, the Pelicans, and the Hornets. So that's still pretty tight. One note, and it's kind of more incentive to keep losing, because what's the fear that we all have here? Jazz, because of the lottery, the lottery structure, Jazz could lose all these games and still not get the number 1, number 2, number 3 overall pick, right, OC?
Right.
The incentive to keep losing, because that makes people go, well, what's the point of losing then? Teams are only allowed in the rules to fall 4 spots from the odds that they finish in, from the position they finish in. So the Jazz, if they stay at 2, the lowest pick they can get is the 6th pick. which is not where you want to be, but it's not like they're going to drop to 8, 9, or 10. So that's one of the incentives to keep losing, so that your net, your safety net, is still relatively high. So that's something to keep in mind. Games in the tank race tonight. The Hornets are hosting the Clippers at 5:00. Not terribly winnable game for the Hornets. Clippers in sixth in the West, and still tons of motivation to stay out of the play-in race. Raptors hosting the Bulls. That's a really winnable game because Bulls are 8 games under 500, and the Raptors have won 5 in a row, OC. So that's definitely a winnable game. Something to keep in mind, 2 rotation players injured. Kelly Olynyk, a fan favorite around here for his couple of years, and Emmanuel Quickley. Those are 2 of the Raptors rotation players that are injured and questionable tonight. May even have already been ruled out. So that's something to keep in mind. Pelicans hosting the Celtics. Again, not a very winnable game. So Jazz are probably not going to gain ground on the Pelicans or Hornets. They could get another win from the Raptors, though, who are just winning every game all of a sudden.
That's your tank race update.
There you go. Tank race update. We're still working on a sponsor for it. If you maybe a gas station, OC, fill up your tank with the tank race update. I don't know.
If you're pulling up into some NFL discussion, airing of grievances is at 877-530-700 takes place and have to burden yourself before you head into the weekend. Up next, it'll be Lindsey Rhodes, some analyst in America's pastime. That's right. Football took over. It's the NFL now. John O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92 on FM.
First play from scrimmage for Philly. They mark him down at the 40-yard line. Toss it to the left side. Barkley's got a lane to the 50, to the 45. Spin move to the 40. Barkley still going. Zigzags inside. 20, 15, 10. Touchdown, Saquon Barkley. He is incredible. Hurts, handoff, bouncing to the right. Barkley, he's in. Touchdown. Saquon Barkley, second of the opening quarter. And the Eagles are moving the football with ease. They take a 13-3 lead over Washington.
Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 700. Final hour starts with a highlight from Westwood One. Ian Eagle on the call. NFC Championship game. Huge performance from Saquon Barkley. Couple of tutties on his first touches of the game. Big win for the Eagles, who punched their ticket to a rematch from a couple seasons ago. Chiefs and Eagles for Super Bowl 59 next Sunday. We are the home of the NFL and the Super Bowl on Utah's #1 sports talk here at ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Joining me to talk about all things NFL, Lindsay Rhodes, NFL insider over at Summer Sports. Lindsay, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. It's fun listening to that clip there and getting back in a Super Bowl state of mind, kind of like pivoting between all of the different lanes of NFL coverage these days. I just got back from the Senior Bowl and have been very much in a draft focus, and listening to that, I was like, yes, a big game coming up. So excited about it.
Yeah, the big game coming up. And I actually do want to get to that, but because you're coming fresh off the Senior Bowl coverage, you're the perfect person to talk about. Look, the pre-draft process for me is the best non-competition thing to talk about in all of sports. Like, I love it all. I love this Senior Bowl stuff. I love the pro day workouts, the combine. All of it is just so fascinating to me. The interviews and the conversations and the League to Wonderlic scores. It's just this crazy circus that we all get into, and I have so much fun with it, especially when we're talking about players on the local front. And we got so many great reports this week about the practice performances of a couple of Utes in defensive lineman Junior Tafuna and the former Utah linebacker Karene Reed. And I wanted to know what you saw from them, what you heard about them, what your thoughts were on those guys and their Senior Bowl performances.
So to clarify, before we get to any of the detailed information about any of the specific players, I want to paint you a picture of what it's like for me at these Senior Bowl practices. I am not a scout or evaluator. That's not really my role, kind of how I approach the NFL or the strength that I bring to the table, I think. And then I also, over the last 10 years, when I've started hyper-focusing on the NFL, have become less and less of a college fan. So I think that I am kind of somebody like you. I like the off season as much as I like the season. I think the roster building aspects of it, the draft, I'm super in, I'm super nerdy, but it literally, I'm like, okay, who are these guys? Like a week ago,
right.
So going to a Senior Bowl practice when you are coming with that frame of reference, it's like going and having the most ADD that you've ever had in your life. It's so funny going to these practices and being like, okay, where do I start? Who do I start with? When you're also like, who are these people? So you're kind of like, should I watch who's going to pop and then just let my eye take me there? But then you can't really do that because you need to see that player pop on one play, but then also see if they can follow it up with some consistency. You're like, okay, the trenches over here, those are fun one-on-ones, but then someone just made a big play of the wide receivers, and so you kind of move your focus over here, and then it's easier for all of us who are not professional evaluators to watch the offensive skill players. Anyway, so that is a really big preface to saying that I don't know if I'm going to add a whole lot of value to the conversation about the specific Utah players that you mentioned, who I think are a little bit further down the draft board. I have heard people bring up their names in various ways in terms of having helped themselves, but it's kind of relative in terms of day 3 or day 2, that type of stuff, depending on the player. And I think that they're both in different buckets, kind of. It's also a fascinating one thing that I will say, having been there at the Senior Bowl all week and just tried to talk to as many people as possible to get different opinions about what people are seeing, and having the opportunity to chase down evaluators whose opinions I really do respect for a variety of different reasons. It's funny to watch what is on Twitter and see the incongruity. So that's one of my big 50,000 foot takeaways is I would advise everybody, much like we do during training camp. And I think people who play fantasy kind of have learned this over the years. There will be a clip during training camp of somebody and it's super flashy. And you're like, oh my God, so-and-so's going to have such a good year. I need to draft him in fantasy. But there's really no way for you to know whether it's a clip and one moment or whether he's consistently dominating in training camp. And I think that is the best example I can give for what happens at Senior Bowl also, because I've seen so many clips of people and then gone and talked to people and they're like, they're not consistent. I don't know. This other thing that they do, like they had a really good play and then that was followed by 3 losses, you know? And so how do you also, sometimes a major wow win can be valuable in and of itself, depending on the ways that they are inconsistent in a negative way. But like Deion Walker's a defensive tackle, for instance, that really popped on day one. There were a couple of different plays of his that went viral in terms of social clips. But he's a guy who would push somebody back for 4 yards and then get pushed back 4 yards, you know, on a couple of plays that followed that. And so knowing what to make of what you're seeing here and the various highs and lows and how you value the high end versus consistency it's all such an interesting puzzle to me.
So as part of that puzzle, and this can kind of be like the first piece of that puzzle, when you're talking to these draft evaluators, I still am very intrigued by the idea of, you know, how they kind of slice the pie, the drill, the live action matters more to me. The combine workout, their opportunity to be so many of these games. What is your overall sense of like the significance of Senior Bowl practice in the grand scheme of things for an overall talent picture after?
I'm going to be honest with you. I heard about every 5th word that you just said, and I don't know if that's on my end or yours, or if you can hear me. But I think in general, I think I got the gist of your question. And I think it's different for everybody. You see different organizations that are consistently drafting people who have good Senior Bowl weeks. And so clearly there are some organizations who see a lot of value in going down to Mobile, getting face-to-face. Mike Tomlin is a guy who was down on the field, literally getting into drills, right, with these guys. And so clearly he's somebody that sees that there's a lot of value he can take away from that. And it's obvious why, because in this situation, you're having, like, on the offensive line, for instance, there's always a big question about which tackles will remain tackles in the league, which ones have to shift to guard. I talked to a guy who was a left guard, Jackson Slater from Sacramento State, who played 42 games in college at left guard, but thinks that his future is at center. And so, you know, he's getting some reps at that. He's also getting some reps at guard. Point being, you're seeing guys do things that they actually haven't done that much on tape in college. So getting a chance to get down and see them in person, I think the major takeaway is how quickly can you adjust? How quickly can you take the coaching note and then implement it to your play with the context of this isn't something that you have done that frequently. So you're really keyed into like coachability and intangibles and quick turnaround processing skills, stuff like that. That's not stuff that will show up on tape. So I think that that's the primary thing that you can take away from a Senior Bowl experience if you are an evaluator or a front office. And I was told by a couple of former general managers that they said they didn't even really focus from a tape standpoint. They were like, everybody gets the tape later. So we'll go back and we'll watch it from a tape breakdown standpoint. But they told me what they have always watched for are things that are intangibles, how they take coaching, how they interact with their teammates. Like a center, for instance. You want the center, I was told by somebody, you want a center who can take control of a room and be almost borderline cocky. Like that's a personality thing that you're looking for in a center, for instance. You get an idea of that down at Senior Bowl more than you would ever get watching tape or maybe even in a meeting. So I think that there are very specific things that you can drill down and take away from Senior Bowl that are not necessarily the things that the people who are sitting in the stands and creating draft content are looking for or even have access to and are tweeting out stuff about the specific plays.
Sorry about the technical difficulties. I can hear you just fine, so I'm hoping that I'm coming through to you now as well.
I hear you.
Lindsay Rhodes is our guest here, NFL insider. Just wrapped up some Senior Bowl coverage, and now let's talk about this approaching Super Bowl. 9 days away, but certainly worth talking about, especially because the possibility of history being made. Chiefs could go 3 Super Bowls in a row, never been done. And look, I think it's already safe to say that Andy Reid is a Hall of Fame coach and that Patrick Mahomes is going to end up in the Hall of Fame. But doing it 3 years in a row could, I think, change some of the calculus on other conversations about greatest of all time at those respective positions, head coach and quarterback. Wanted your stance on those thoughts.
Yeah, I think that there's no doubt that Mahomes is teetering on the cusp of being in a LeBron MJ type debate, right? For the GOAT of the NFL. And it's funny to me how many people are probably like throwing things as they hear that. It's been really interesting in the last couple of years to watch public opinion just shift against him the way that it did against the Patriots for obvious reasons. We all kind of get sick of the same people all the time. But there is no doubt that Patrick Mahomes is, in my mind, one of the best quarterbacks and will be in that conversation when he's done because there's still so much game left to him. And I have no doubt that we're going to be having those specific Brady or Mahomes debates down the road. Andy Reid, I think this year, more than any other year, maybe. And I mean, that's probably a little bit of recency bias, but I don't know how you don't put him in those types of conversations at this point, because this year you look at the Chiefs and they just didn't, anyone who plays fantasy knows, they didn't pop in like a, wow, this offense is so explosive and look at all of these great players. And it kind of looks like it creates a narrative where they're just a average team that continues to win. And I think that has exacerbated the frustration with the referees and the luck conversation and all that kind of stuff. I am of the mind, pushing the refs aside, that conversation, I am of the mind that the Chiefs have become really, really good at putting themselves in position to create their own luck. I think that their game management skill is second to none. I think that they're really good at staying ahead of the sticks. And so they don't have those explosive plays, but they just can move the ball surgically down the field. And so it keeps the score down. It keeps the fantasy scores down. They spread the ball around. There aren't these big playmakers like a Tyreek in the old Chiefs days where you're going to hit him and he's clearly the target earner. Now it's like Patrick Mahomes behind a really solid offensive line, particularly in the middle. And then that gives you an opportunity to read the field and just go where the hole is. And he's so elite that he's going to be able to do that consistently. And I think that, I mean, what Andy Reid and Spags and like all the entire coaching staff, I really do think we're looking at a valid conversation where somebody should hire Spags just to take him away from the Chiefs if they are a competitor of the Chiefs or like one of these teams that keeps butting up against them. I think that that's almost becoming a valid way to look at that. Although I'm also a big believer that some people are better as coordinators. I don't know if that's Spags or not, but I think it might be. But it's, what they've been able to do in terms of putting their players in a position to succeed is just wild. And then there's the Eagles. I can't believe I've talked this long and haven't even mentioned the Eagles, who I think have like a roster that is top to bottom we had debates in Mobile about whether their roster was the best in the league and whether the Lions were in that conversation. But I am in an Eagles camp. I cast my vote for them.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Look, whether you prescribe to the belief that the Chiefs get extra help from referees or not, you're up against it when you're playing against the combination of Spags, Chris Jones, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. The list goes on and on. Andy Reid.
Yep.
But if anyone can do it, it's the unbelievable offensive line collected by this Philadelphia Eagles team. I'm probably higher on Jalen Hurts than most people are. And obviously, you've got either the best or the second best running back in the league, and the conversation between Saquon and Derrick Henry is a fun one to have. But right now, Saquon Barkley looks unstoppable, especially running behind that offensive line. So when you get down to the Super Bowl matchup, can the Chiefs actually win 3 in a row over this juggernaut of a Philadelphia Eagles team?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that the answer is yes. That said, the Chiefs are like a one score. They won 17 straight one possession games, right? Like that is the Chiefs. That's insane. That again goes back to the coaches and putting them in a position to succeed. They can just navigate those close matchups. I think this will be a close matchup, and I am having such a hard time trying to predict which way I see it tilting, because I think that the Chiefs have been such a tough eval this year for all the reasons that we've said. From an advanced metric standpoint, we talk about them like they're average. That's not what the numbers tell us. The numbers tell us they still are a top 10 offense in terms of efficiency. You look at EPA metrics and stuff like that. The defense is still good. It's just they're not like 1 or 2, which is what you would expect these teams to be that are in the Super Bowl. I think that they have interesting strengths and weaknesses in terms of the way that they will butt up against one another. I think whether the Chiefs can run the ball against this Eagles defense and that front, I think that that's a question that I legitimately have. The Chiefs ran the ball against Buffalo a lot more than I expected them to from a game plan standpoint. But then Buffalo's defense actually was not that good this year. Which is, again, by the way, and I know I'm all over the place here. The whole defense wins championships. Let me show you a lot of advanced numbers that would suggest that's not the case, because the consistent pattern that we saw with the teams that were remaining once there was like 8 left was that they had very high end offenses, and then the defenses were all over the map. And Buffalo clearly had some holes on the defensive side of the ball. Philadelphia does not. And even in the passing game, what I'm most intrigued to see is Patrick Mahomes. We talked about his ability to just, surgically find the hole and get the ball in the right place. Like, where is the hole in the Eagles defense? I mean, like the 2 cornerbacks that they drafted last year, which again is another statement about the strength of their roster, that they were just like, hey, let's take a cornerback. Okay, our next pick, what do we want? I don't know. Let's just add some more depth there. He's the best player available. They were back-to-back cornerbacks, and then they are both on the field, and they're both outstanding. And then, Jalen Carter from the year before, they just have strength all over the field. So I think one is a really strong roster, and the other one is a really strong quarterback and coaching staff. And it'll just be interesting to see how those butt up against one another.
Where do you stand on Jalen Hurts? Is he a top 10 quarterback in the league right now? We did a deep dive into his numbers about a week ago and how he kind of stacked up with, at that time, the remaining quarterbacks in the playoff picture. I guess it was more than a week ago. I think it was heading into the divisional round. And like his touchdown to interception ratio is good. His completion percentage is good. He's got the ability to run. But the conversation around him is drastically different than the conversation around Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, right, and, of course, Patrick Mahomes. Where do you stand on Hurts?
Hurts is an interesting one because the passing game kind of goes in and out, and it's hard to know why and how much of that is Jalen and how much of that is not. Like the first 2 playoff games that they won, by the way, that's notable, but the first 2 playoff games that they played this year, A.J. Brown had 3 catches on 10 targets for 24 yards. Like how is that possible that that there's 7 balls that went his way that he wasn't able to catch. That many. That said, I just pulled up the EPA numbers on the year, and in the regular season, Jalen Hurts was 8th in EPA per dropback, and you know who he was right ahead of? Patrick Mahomes, who was 9th, and Joe Burrow, who was 10th. So I do think that there's a lot of value that is created by Jalen Hurts. I think it's just maybe lack of consistency. I think he's a really interesting eval, but so I'm not sure that I'm the best person to know how to pull out what is him versus him being along for the ride with the best environment that a quarterback could possibly ask to be in, because clearly I am a big proponent in general that environment matters so much. And I think we saw that with Sam Darnold this year in Minnesota after many, many, many years of being in terrible environments, either because of coaching or talent around him. I think that matters a lot. And I think that the big question for Jalen Hurts is whether he's a tractor or a trailer. And I don't think we've seen any evidence that he's a tractor, that he's pulling the team around him, but I don't know that he's even had an opportunity to prove that because the team is so freaking good. So, but I don't feel comfortable saying, yes, he's a trailer, like they're just pulling him along with them. I'm not sure about that, but there's no doubt he's playing behind an insane offensive line, and also having Saquon Barkley in that backfield is massively beneficial for Jalen Hurts, especially a running quarterback. I mean, what do you even do as a defense when you're faced with that?
Well, sometimes you give up 3 touchdowns to the running quarterback, as we saw in these playoffs already this year. Lindsay Rhodes for another minute or two here talking the upcoming Super Bowl, and we'll get to a Pro Bowl conversation before we send her away. Last thing on the Eagles, I don't remember a coach taking his team to a Super Bowl who had such a complicated narrative around him during the regular season, like Sirianni. Like, does this silence those doubters that he's back in a Super Bowl again, despite all of the rumor and innuendo that he lost the locker room and these guys don't respect him or whoever doesn't like him? I mean, this team's in the Super Bowl. Yes, it is probably the best roster in football. I'm with you, but he at least hasn't screwed it up. Does it change the conversation around Sirianni?
I don't think it will. Whether that's fair or not, I'm not sure, but I don't think it will, simply because the roster is so good. I think you're right that you get a lot of credit for, at the very least, and this is, by the way, the most cynical way to look at it, you didn't screw it up, right? And so at least you are good enough. You meet that bar. Where I think the conversation becomes interesting, and I think that I'm going to throw Sean McDermott in this conversation, because we actually kind of bandied this conversation around in Senior Bowl, like off air, just amongst ourselves too. Sean McDermott, I think, also fits that same category, where when you zoom out and you say, okay, you've got a really good team and you're trying to win the last game of the season, and that is ultimately the roster that's been built for you. I wouldn't say that's necessarily the case with Buffalo, but Buffalo keeps butting up against the Chiefs, right, and can't get over that specific hump. Then you have to ask the question, does our coach, like, they're good enough to get us there, but do they have that thing that can put us over, that can get us over that wall? And are they the value-added reason that we're doing that? Or is there someone else out there that intangibly, like, they bring that value-added thing that can get you over the hump more so than this guy does? And I don't know what the answer is. I think that those are easier questions to answer if you're actually in the building. A lot of times seeing what they're specifically bringing to the table, sitting in meetings with them, and you just kind of know how much you're being carried by your coordinators, or how much of all of the organization of the team is on you. But I do think that they're valid questions with both of those coaches, because the expectations are so great. And I don't know the answer. And I think it's actually a very interesting question. If somebody were to peel back the onion layers of how do we assign credit to Nick Sirianni for the Eagles? Are there a lot of examples of play calls, offensively, defensively, whatever, that he's brought to the table to put them in a position to have success? or is it just that he has better players? And I think that that's actually a valid conversation to have, and one that I'm interested in having for the next several months.
Okay, before I let you go, we have this interim week between AFC NFC championships and the Super Bowl weekend, where the Pro Bowl or the Pro Bowl games take place, and I think that player enthusiasm is at an all-time low. It would seem, as you get down to like the deep resentment in the participation bowl and whatever. Is there a fix for the NFL's All-Star Weekend?
I don't know. I don't care. I mean, I don't even care if there's a game, personally. The NFL will never, like, or even any of this stuff, right? Like, I am just sort of the mind that if you just awarded them and honestly, I'm just not even a fan of the Pro Bowl as an award, because I think it's so off because of the fan voting. Like, there's no doubt that the Pro Bowl is a popularity contest to start with, and that the All Pro Award is the one that is far more prestigious. And we all have examples of just Pro Bowlers that get in because they're big names, and they're no longer actually playing at a level that merits a Pro Bowl inclusion. And that's before you even get to the layer of the fact that they turn it down and don't even go. And now you've got people who are like 8 layers deep that can say that they're Pro Bowlers, and it just becomes a little bit comedic. I think it's probably fun that they've turned it into a skills competition, creates good content, which will never go away because the NFL can sell it. And if the NFL can sell something, and the ratings will be there, and they will always be there for something that's an NFL. Like, I haven't looked at it for the last couple of years, but I remember a few years ago, I looked at the ratings for the Pro Bowl, and it beat out like NBA playoff games. So we're sitting here like trying to fix it and talking about how silly it is, but it rates. So they're going to continue to do it. I don't even know if they care about fixing it really all that much, because people are going to watch whatever they put on TV. It's not my favorite it's not my favorite event. I would say it's probably my least favorite event that the NFL does. It's the one thing I feel like I can actually check out of and not feel like I need to watch. And cause it's so incongruous with the rest of everything else. Like, you're not going to feel like you missed it, you know? So I don't quite know how to fix what you have with the Pro Bowl. But I'll tell you, I'm probably not going to be watching it.
We have Pro Bowl coverage right here at 1 p.m. Sunday via our friends at Westwood One, and I'm with you. Like,
definitely then. Ignore everything I said.
No, I'm with you, because it's just like that game is hard to that game or that collection of whatever is hard to watch. The broadcasters on that thing are going to be in an impossible position trying to make it interesting on the radio front. So whatever. I'm gonna now put you on the spot in the most unfair way possible, because we're doing this thing in the state of Utah right now where our new NHL team, we're trying to figure out what to name the damn thing. All right.
Ooh,
right now they're called the Utah Hockey Club. You may be aware. And
like Washington football team. Yeah, that went over big. Okay.
Yes. So we've got Utah Hockey Club that was introduced as the placeholder name for the first year of the franchise. And then they did this whole fan sourcing of all these names. They put out these surveys, whatever. It's down to Utah Outlaws, Utah Mammoth, or Utah Hockey Club as the permanent name.
Stop it.
You're going through the Salt Lake City airport, and there's this kind of baby blue and black. It's cool looking. It's aesthetically pleasing. Are you more likely to buy that T-shirt as someone with no real affiliation to the state if it says Utah Outlaws, Utah Mammoth, and the logo associated? Which would you pick?
Okay, I'm going to go with Mammoth, but this is by process of elimination, because I feel like Utah Outlaws is so counterintuitive that it's funny. Like, no one thinks of, when they're like Utah, they're like people who break the law, right? No.
No, I actually love that.
The types of images that are conjured up, like the down and dirty state of Utah. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's where I would go. So I would maybe play up, like, you know, the mountains and that type of a theme, then I would maybe go with the Mammoth.
Like, all right, time for the airing of grievances here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. Air your grievances. I'm going to start by airing a grievance with whatever the connection issue was that ruined the end of that interview with Lindsey Rhodes. Phenomenal guest. Great, thoughtful answer on the outsider perspective on Utah being the Mammoth or the Outlaws as well. Very, very interesting to hear someone who just travels through the state and their thoughts on it. So that was awesome.
Yeah, I love that. Especially we were talking off air. We here in the state we hear Outlaws and we think, oh, the Mountain Men, the Cowboys, the Westerns that have been filmed here. And yeah, that fits. Someone who's probably not familiar with that history thinks Outlaws, people who are always breaking the law, maybe modern people doing that. Yeah, I don't think of Utah when I do that. Love that.
It's great. It's absolutely phenomenal reasoning on why Outlaws is fine, but Mammoth, I think, seems to be the prevailing answer for everyone. And look, I'm excited about it. Rest in peace to all you Yeti loyalists, but jump on the Mammoth bandwagon now. All right. James Peterson usually will air a grievance or two. I have a couple that I want to air. On this one, look, the NBA's problems with superstars not playing and Adam Silver addressing those and making rules for those, I guess I have to air a grievance with the entire media, with the sentiment against young people in America, whatever, because a couple players have been outspoken this week, James, about the fact that load management in the NBA is just as often, if not more often, dictated from the team side, from the coaching and front office perspective, as opposed to the player demanding that he not have to play back-to-back games. Zion Williamson talked about this. Steph Curry talked about this, that like, look, load management is a team wanting to maximize their investment just as much or more than it is a player saying, no, this is too much for me. Zion Williams says, physically, yes, I can play back-to-backs. I can play every game, but I work for the Pelicans, and the Pelicans say that he cannot. Steph Curry made the same point. about how he campaigns to play on back-to-backs. He campaigns to play every single game for the Warriors. And sometimes the decision comes down from on high that star players are not allowed to do so. I think that so many of us have, just because of, you hear executives in the NBA especially talking about how this is a problem. A lot of this I thought was just like the product of players having so much power, collective bargaining mistakes, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like Steve Kerr, a guy from the old school days of the NBA, is telling his guys, hey, sometimes you got to sit, you got to rest so that we're fresh for the playoffs. What? No. What? This disrupts the whole narrative, James. Grievance.
Yes. Here's the thing about that. I feel like that was pretty obvious early on that it's mostly coming from the teams, because this really started with Greg Popovich figuring out, and the San Antonio Spurs front office figuring out a way to get the most out of Tim Duncan in his final few years as a really good player, as a cornerstone piece of the Spurs, and as they were still their final few years of being title contenders just about year in and year out, he started resting his best players, Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, when they were playing the Miami Heat, who had the big three back then with LeBron, Wade, and Bosh on national TV. And that was where this whole thing, the talking point anyway, kind of started. And that was absolutely a Greg Popovich / San Antonio Spurs team decision. And now, 10 years later, in those last 10 years, somehow it's gotten flipped to, oh, this must be the players' fault. They must be requesting to rest more often. When, I don't know, at the beginning it seemed like it was pretty obvious with that example, especially with the Spurs, that this was not Tim Duncan asking to not play back-to-backs. It was his team saying, you know what, this is a way we can keep you fresh at your now advanced NBA career age for the playoffs.
And I guess the rest of the league just adopted that for young players, which makes very little sense. But the grievance is against all of us that have flipped it to blame players. And it's not always players. It's not often players, it sounds like, according to at least a couple of these individuals. And if I'm Adam Silver and I'm hearing this type of conversation,
okay, but in his heyday, one of his best movies that's not Die Hard or one of the other ones that maybe did better at the box office, still one of his better movies. I'm like, what streaming service says Armageddon? That's got to be on a streaming service, right? Looking, nothing, not available anywhere for free except for I have YouTube TV, and they have a bit of a video on demand thing. So I pulled it up there. I'm expecting, the full theatrical version of this movie. No, I got the TV edited version. The only way I could watch it for free, OC, was watching the TV edited version, which, by the way, is super sped up. There's no anticipation for any of the big moments. If you've watched the actual movie over and over again, like I did growing up, you know what's missing, and you're like, why are you rushing me through when they're trying to get to 800 feet drilling here? I want to watch the actual movie. Grievance, streaming services that have the edited TV version only for free of some of your favorite movies, including Armageddon. And I think we're having audio issues again, OC. I think
that's unfortunate. Now,
I got you a little bit better now. Go ahead and keep getting talking about your point there. I didn't hear most of that. Go ahead, start with your reaction to my grievance. Okay, I don't think we have you. Okay, well, another grievance on my end for these weird audio issues we got here. We're gonna go to another break here. Hopefully, we can get it fixed up for the next for the last couple of minutes of the show here. Apologies again to people watching on the stream and listening to the show here. We're gonna do our best to get it fixed for the last few minutes of the show. More of the Sean O'Connell Show will finish it up next, hopefully without any audio connection issues on OC's end, here on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.